Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I want to speak to you guys about ADHD and anger, like ADHD rage. Now this is something that I really struggle with, and that's why I want to talk to you guys about it, because like I say, you guys are going to be the only people in the entire world that are going to understand me and be able to relate to me. So, you know, let's just talk about it. Even though anger is a natural, even healthy emotion for every human being to experience, is so valid. You know, every human being will experience anger, rage, infuriation in their lifetime. You know, I'm not here to say this is just an ADHD thing, but what I am here to say is, with my experience with ADHD, I definitely feel like ADHD for me has intensified and like exacerbated my kind of anger and my like anger issues. And I really feel like I do have anger issues, but I definitely know that it's not just a Molly thing. Like what I go on to talk about, I think a lot of ADHDers will relate to. Depending on how anger, you know, irritability, infuriation and, you know, rage is dealt with, you know, if it's dealt with positively and you've got positive kind of coping mechanisms and strategies in place, then great, you might not have such a negative impact with anger. But if you're like me and you really struggle to process it, you know, and if you don't have any healthy mechanisms, coping mechanisms to help you process it, you know, it can go on to really impact like friendships, relationships, careers, your self-esteem. You know, it can have a huge negative impact on areas of your life that people wouldn't really necessarily think that it would. So I want to share some of the ways that ADHD and rage for me has impacted my life and like what I experience. So yeah, let's go. As an ADHDer, I really struggle with impulsiveness, and I feel like, again, that triggers when I'm feeling like angry or kind of like just very irritable. I find I'm very impulsive and I react on impulse, and I react on pure like emotion, like raw emotion. I don't have time, I don't like take time to myself to like process it and then react later. Because I'm so like impulsive, I react like there and then, and I don't give myself time to like cool down. So when I feel myself like exploding with anger, I don't take the time to like process it. It just like bang, and then like there's an explosive like outburst of anger, meltdown, and yeah, I really struggle with that as an ADHDer. For me, even the tiniest little thing can like trigger me into full-blown like anger rage, ADHD anger rage, like honestly. So I'm going to share some things that just really trigger me. So yeah, here we go. The way someone is speaking and like looking at me, someone drinking really loudly, like slurping their drink, or eating and chewing like really loudly, someone criticizing me. If I feel like I'm being rejected, or like I'm being excluded from a group, or like a friendship group, or not being included, like yeah, that's yeah. When I'm actually running late, when I'm running late for something and I've tried so hard to be on time, because I'm so chronically bad at time management, I wind myself up, because I'm just like, why can't I be on time? So like when I'm running late, because I don't keep track of my time and manage my time right, then I just wind myself up and get angry at myself. Loud noises when I'm trying to focus or watch the telly or like do something, like loud noise, like dog barking, loud music, the TV being on loud, like people talking too loud. Those things. Long and tedious tasks. So when I'm feeling overstimulated in situations, like bright lights, like I say, like loud noises, stuff like that, like it really triggers me. This one is probably like one that just, yeah, it's honestly, it's one of the things that I don't know whether it's ADHD or it's autism, but it's something that just really easily triggers me. And that's if my clothing that I'm wearing doesn't like feel right. I know you might be thinking like, how does clothing feel right? Well, if I have a jumper on or a t-shirt on and it's like, I feel like, you know, it's too clingy, or if I have labels and the labels keep like scratching at me, or if the seams in my jumpers or like a t-shirt like keep like itching me or scratching me, or if I'm wearing socks and the seams keep twisting, or I'm wearing socks and they keep sliding down my feet because they're in a trainer. Oh my god, these sort of things could, like, they drive me bonkers, and it just makes me really angry because it overstimulates me. But like I say, for me, I really feel like it's my impulsiveness, because that's something I really struggle with the most. With ADHD, it's my impulsiveness, and I feel like I don't have the skills to be able to like take myself out of the situation, or like not react right there and then. Like I react on impulse and pure emotion, like I said, and like it's just like I can't, when I'm in that like state of anger or rage, when I'm like deep in that anger emotion and I've been sucked in with all the intensity of the anger and the rage and the infuriation, feeling uncomfortable, overstimulated, like it's impossible for me to then think to myself, take yourself out of the situation, let's not react straight away. That's not something that I've naturally ever been good at. So as an ADHD, I've tried so many like self-help tips, things that I've seen online on TikTok, you know, and I've tried them and I've felt really deflated because they don't work for me. And it's been one of those things that has made me feel like I'm over exaggerating, and you know, it's just caused me to feel like nothing's ever going to help me and I'm way beyond the point of help. And that's why I'm really reluctant sometimes to share things that I do that help me and that I've learned, because I don't want anyone to feel, you know, deflated and like they can't be helped, or like things just are never gonna get better for them, or they can't help themselves. Do you know, I just worry that you guys will feel some of the emotions I felt, because I know how horrible and really like intense they can be. But this one, I feel like I'm confident that it works for me, so much so that, you know, I've seen other people use it in different ways and they've interpreted this coping strategy in many different ways, and the way I think you use it is a personal way of using it. So I just want to share this with you guys, and hopefully you're able to take something from this and maybe implement it in your life in a different way and interpret it in a way that it will help like you. I am going to give you a little bit of like a tip that I use, that I learned literally, and I'm not joking when I say this, literally when I was in a pupil referral unit about, oh Christ, it must have been about 10 years ago now. I learned it, but I never implemented it in my life until I saw it in one of my old school pupil referral books that we'd written down about a week, no, not a week, about 2-3 months ago. I saw it and I thought, actually, I think that could be a really good thing for me to try and visualise and really kind of use when I'm feeling angry or like explosive with like rage. So I know this is something that is gonna help some people and it won't help others, and I'm very aware of that, and I don't want you to feel like, well, that didn't work for me, I'm beyond help. No, our brains are all wired differently. What works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you, so please remember that. This is just something that I do that works for me, and I feel like, you know, if it works for me, it might help other people. So I'm going to pass it on, and if it works for you, I'm really happy. If not, don't give up, because everyone has a different way that their brain processes things, and different strategies, different coping mechanisms that work for you probably won't work for me. So definitely hang in there. If this doesn't work for you, I'm sorry, and I really don't want you to feel like you're beyond help, because you're not. I was at that point, and like I say, this is something I learned 10 years ago, which I never even bothered to try to learn, but I saw it a few months ago, and I've started to implement it into my life, when I'm feeling overwhelmed and overstimulated and angry. I've started to slowly implement this into my life, and I feel like it has positively impacted me in ways that I'm able to now like take steps rather than act on impulse. Like I say, it doesn't cure it. It doesn't mean like every time this thing works, because it doesn't. I have to be in the right frame of mind. I have to be willing to do what I'm going to say, like go through the steps. If I'm not in that right frame of mind, then it's useless, it doesn't work. So yeah, I just want to pass this on because it might be helpful for you. So what I was taught when I was in a pupil referral unit is an acronym called STOP. So it's STOPP, and this acronym is basically steps when you're feeling overwhelmed and you're in an environment that's making you feel maybe anxious or angry, irritable, you know, and you feel like you need to get out of there, and maybe you're like me and you act on impulse. These steps are they give you steps basically in order to process that emotion and work through it, rather than like me act on impulse. These steps have really helped me, so I want to just share them with you. So I'm going to start obviously with the S. So S stands for stop and take yourself to a safe space. So for me, stop means momentarily, like take yourself out of that situation, take yourself out of that environment to a safe space, somewhere you feel that you can decompress, focus on your breathing, you know, take yourself away from the situation at hand that's making you feel triggered. So for me, that's taking myself to a safe space where I will more than likely sit on my own, because other people can easily trigger me with the way that they're eating, if they're eating loud, chewing loud, drinking loud, talking loud, keep talking at me. Those things can really trigger me, and I need to be on my own so I have time to work step by step through this acronym. The next one is the T. So this one is take a breath. So this one, again, like I say, from the S, you take yourself to a safe space, stop, take yourself out of the situation to a safe space. The T is when you're in that safe space, sit down, close your eyes and just take a breath and really focus on your breathing. This enables you to decompress and it gives you time to naturally like calm down. The next one is the O, and that is observe. This one is something that at the beginning of this kind of thing I was like, what does that mean? What's so important about observing the situation? Like, I don't want to be in that situation, it's making me angry, so why am I going to want to observe it? But it's important that we validate our feelings. So I always find that when I take myself out, I'm able to then think like to myself, what is actually making me feel this way? What is it about that environment, that situation that's making me feel so triggered, making me feel so angry? Then I start listing them in my head and they then don't seem so intense because I'm able to list them and I'm thinking, really, I can deal with that. I've dealt with that so many times. This is, you know, I'm able to like bullet point them and talk myself through them. So the P is put into perspective. So for me, again, was a little bit like, what does that mean? Like, how do I implement that into my strategy? Like, what's that gonna do? I asked myself, what is the bigger picture? What is the actual trigger here? Although I've observed it and I've, you know, written down the things that have triggered it, that I feel like I'm feeling, you know, what environment I was in and things like that. Well, now I could put in some thought and perspective. So this is what is causing it. And then I think to myself, what is another way of thinking of this? How, you know, how can I get myself out of this situation? Then I also feel like if there's another party or another person involved, you know, what is their perspective? I then try to think, if I was in the other person's shoes, how might I be seeing this from their point of view? Because it's always good for me to try to feel like I can see both sides of the story, because again, I really feel like that is something that I have to work through as an individual. That's something I struggle with. So the last P in the acronym STOP is proceed. So I've added on a little bit to this. I always think proceed with caution. For me, that's how I do. I then think to myself, right, do I want to go back into that environment, or do I feel like if I go back in that environment, will it trigger me again? Do I feel calm enough to go back into that environment, or do I still need to sit on my own and completely take myself out of this situation, like, you know, for the foreseeable future? Do I need to sit out here on my own completely like now and just don't go back into that environment? But I need to then think of my next step. So like I proceed with caution. So then I give myself enough time to then, if I need to sit outside more, then I regulate my emotions and I validate them, and I feel like what I'm feeling is very valid, and I feel like now I'm able to process them a bit more. I can go and get back into that environment and, you know, speak to the person that was also involved, and I'm calm enough to do that, or speak to my safe person, like an adult, or, you know, my mum, my dad. You know, I then just, you know, the last P for me is proceed with caution, and that's how I have learned those steps. And I always think to myself that in the time it seems like it's taking hours and hours and hours, but it's not. I'm just breaking down the steps, and by doing that I'm able to then give myself enough time to decompress and like to focus and to like regulate my emotion. Please don't be fooled and think, well, that's silly, like that's not going to work for me. Like, it didn't work for me first time. Actually, it didn't work for me the first probably like 30 times. It still doesn't work all the time now when I try to implement it, when I'm feeling overstimulated, overwhelmed, angry, like however I'm feeling. If I implement it, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work. I have to be in the right frame of mind, you know, and it doesn't happen overnight. Each time it gets a little bit easier to implement the STOP acronym, and it gets a little bit more natural. But you might feel like it's a forced coping mechanism for the first few times to think, oh, that's really silly. Like, I'm sat here thinking to myself, like, what's the steps? But actually it works for me, and I hope that it works for other people, because I feel like passing it on might just help other people. Like I say, I'm not a therapist. This is just something that I learned years and years ago but failed to implement then. Now I'm a bit older, I feel like it's working because I'm able to understand the steps a little bit more. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope this video hasn't, like, you know, gone on and on and on and it's boring. I just wanted to talk about a topic that I really struggle with, and by giving you some examples of personal kind of struggles, and then hopefully by giving you a little bit of a coping mechanism I use, it might help you, and I really hope that it does. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Remember to like and subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.